Hi, I'm Benji Hardy. I've got your Arkansas Times headlines for Wednesday, August 19th. We'll start today with the death of John Correnti, the chairman and CEO of Big River Steel. Correnti died yesterday while on a business trip to Chicago. He was 68 years old, and we don't know many other details as of yet. The cause of death is still unknown. Now, the Big River Steel plant is under construction in Osceola, Arkansas. It's notable because it has been partially financed by over $100 million in various incentives from the state as part of a super project under the state's Amendment 82. The Arkansas Teacher Retirement System also contributed an additional $125 million in venture capital, so there's a very sizable public investment on the line. George Hopkins, the executive director of the Teacher Retirement System of the state, said today that the Big River Steel project would not be altered in any way because of the news of Correnti's death. Hopkins said that he expects the mill will still be completed on time and under budget. It's expected to begin operations about a year from now in July of 2016. Moving on, Governor Asa Hutchinson made the case today for continuing Medicaid expansion in Arkansas in some form or fashion. This is pretty major news. The governor was addressing the legislative task force on healthcare reform about Medicaid expansion, which in Arkansas is popularly known as the private option. Now, this question about whether the governor would continue the private option, would advocate for it continuing it, has been hanging over his administration since it took office in January. Now, he convinced hardliners within his own party during the legislative session this year to agree to a reauthorization of the private option, but with the caveat that he was creating this task force to study what to do next. Now, the smart political money has been all along on the governor continuing the private option program. Even though that might run counter to some of his own conservative instincts to provide a generous health care benefit, that is, it also pumps hundreds of millions of dollars into the Arkansas economy. It has the support of powerful business interests such as hospitals and insurance carriers, and it results in a net gain to the state's budget. And most importantly, I mean, there's just the sheer political cost of kicking hundreds of thousands of people off their insurance were the program to end. Well, today the governor essentially made many of those same arguments to the task force. He said that saying no to Medicaid expansion would result in between $1.4 and $1.7 billion drained out of the state's economy. More importantly, he said that 220,000 people would have their health care coverage ended. And finally, he noted that the old system of caring for the uninsured through a patchwork of charity clinics and emergency rooms has been dismantled since the private option went into effect. So he concluded, quote, if we continue to provide care for those 220,000 people, we have to have some kind of Medicaid expansion with a combination of federal and state dollars. That makes sense, and it's good news. But he also said that we can, quote, do better in making some changes to the program, including more cost sharing. He wants to see, he suggested 7 points to the task force to improve the program, such as work training requirements, and making the insurance somewhat less generous to beneficiaries, also providing increased cost sharing on the part of the people that receive the insurance. One final point, Hutchinson also made it a point to say that he continues to oppose the Affordable Care Act because of, quote, the negative impact that it's had on individuals, businesses, and the state. Now, the governor's really trying to have it both ways here. Medicaid expansion, the private option, is, after all, a part of the Affordable Care Act. It never would have happened without the Affordable Care Act. So when he says he opposes the Affordable Care Act, but he also says that continuing Medicaid expansion is the compassionate and sensible thing to do. Well, just keep in mind that those two things are actually part of the same thing. Finally, a quick note, another request for money to shore up the state's prison system. Yesterday, a subcommittee of the Legislative Council signed off on a request from the governor for $7.4 million to open an additional 200 spaces at a facility in Pine Bluff, 200 additional prison beds, that is. This is all in the context of the state's ongoing attempt to alleviate some of the pressure on Arkansas's correction system, which has been overwhelmed these past couple of years by a flood of parole revocations. Arkansas's jails and prisons are operating well above capacity, and they have for some time. So this money still requires approval from the full Legislative Council, which is meeting on Friday morning. That's it for today. Back tomorrow.